Hello and welcome to Out of the Fog. I'm Karen Hager. Each week at this time, we gather for spiritual conversation with enlightening guests, and I'm glad you're here. You can find out more about my work as an intuitive guide and spiritual teacher at karenhager.com. Now then, as spiritual beings who are here to have a physical experience, our skin suit can get kind of roughed up in the process. Lots of dings and damage and changes happening. And what we experience in the body, at least as I believe it, always has an intersection with our emotional and energetic states. It's never just physical. So sometimes it's nice to hear from somebody who has a foot in both the spiritual and the medical worlds. And that's my guest today. Medical intuitive Timothy Wallace is here to share some of the ways in which he can feel intuitively into physical systems and share some ways you might be able to listen more closely to your body too. Are you ready to meet him? Psychic medium, intuitive, and healer Timothy Wallace entered the energy healing space following a 25-year career as a physician assistant. Once free of the healthcare provider label and all that entails, he found he could help others in ways he never imagined. Timothy combines his finely tuned attention to detail with an innate ability to be fully present in a body scan that helps you better understand your current state of health. He's completed a 3-year mentorship program with Joseph Shiel and has been a featured medium with New Jersey Psychic Dinners. You can find out more about Timothy and his work at timothywallace.com. Timothy, welcome to Out of the Fog.
Hi, Karen. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
How did you become aware of your abilities as a medical intuitive? Was it while you were working as a physician assistant?
In a way, yes, I would say. And one of the ways that it became apparent to me something was going on would be was when I would present a case to my supervising physician. Um, Many times I would come to him and say, "Oh, this feels like tendinitis, or this feels like rosacea, this feels like gout," and he'd always say to me, "Well, you're not feeling it, are you?" um, in some ways I was. I didn't realize it at the time, but in some ways I was. So that sort of opened the door, so to speak. Working towards the end of my career, I began to open up spiritually and found that I was able to feel abnormalities in other people's bodies. It started slowly while I was working, but when I stopped working professionally and started doing this uh, more frequently or with more intent, I found how powerful it was.
When you talk about becoming aware of abnormalities in other people's bodies, what do you mean?
Well, for me, what I do is, I'm not the type of person that it's not like I walk past you in a supermarket and suddenly get a bad feeling and feel the need to tell you something. What happens with me is I tune into your energy and then sort of jump in, so to speak, and feel my way around and pretty much perform a physical on you from head to toe, starting with the head, eyes, ears, nose, and throat, working my way down. And as I'm doing that, I sort of feel and see what's going on.
You also are a gifted psychic medium and trained with Joseph Shiel, who people know from Lilydale and from the that Netflix documentary. Is there a place where your gifts as a medical intuitive intersect with your gifts as a psychic medium? I hear people calling themselves medical mediums, and that's why I'm wondering about this question.
Well, for me, the intersection is I found that if I get myself into the space that I am in when I'm doing mediumship, it's pretty much the same space that I'm in when I'm doing medical intuition. So it's that inner space where you're at peace that inner space where you're present. Um, and I found myself able to be present very quickly for people, but with that inner space where you're present and able to notice um, oh, the finest detail. Is, pretty much.
When you're present with someone as a medical intuitive, are you also receiving guidance and messages from their loved ones in spirit?
No, no,
Okay.
I'm tuned into them and into them only.
So it sounds like it's separate. I was wondering, I was imagining you doing a body scan and then with everyone's beloved dead also standing around making comments on what you were doing. So I'm hearing you say it's two very separate processes.
It's two separate processes, but now that you bring it up, I believe that it would be possible. I think it may be overwhelming to a degree, but I think it may be possible.
Why don't we pay better attention to our physical bodies? Because our physical bodies talk to us all the time. Our physical system and our energetic system and emotional system. Why don't we listen to those messages?
I believe we're trained to we're trained as spiritual beings in a skin suit to look outward and not look inward. So a lot of times, folks will experience symptoms and be afraid, so to speak, and not want to follow them up. Sometimes folks will experience symptoms and experience it for such a long period of time that it just becomes their normal, not realizing that it's abnormal. Many times, folks um, just don't want to know the answer.
As a medical intuitive, are you sensing things before physical symptoms begin?
Sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes, and I'll there's a scan that I did for someone recently where I kept going back to the lungs. I was insisting that there was congestion here, and I was told over and over again, no, that's not the case. And so it was a bit frustrating because I knew what I felt. Then a week later, I got the email. Well, I now have a horrible chest cold and I've got the worst congestion in my lungs I've ever had.
Oh.
So sometimes it's predictive, but most of the time it's the here and now.
Hmm. Can you say a little bit about how you prepare for a medical intuitive session and how you are able to bring yourself to be present in someone else's system? What does that feel like or look like or sound like for you?
Well, for me in preparation, I there's always a quick meditation that I do, and and in doing that, I open up my energy centers, my chakras. And one thing that your audience may or may not know is that each of our energy centers, each of our chakras, corresponds to a separate musical note. Um, Do corresponds to our root chakra. Ray corresponds to our sacral chakra. Mi corresponds to our solar plexus chakra, and so on. So basically, what I do to prepare for a medical intuition session is open up my chakras by singing the Do Re Mi song and opening up all my chakras that way. And then I just simply um, say to myself, I encircle myself in the white light of God's love and divine protection, and then ask for guidance along the way as we do the scan. And then basically at that point, I'm ready to I always do an aura reading for my clients first, because based on what I see and feel in their aura, if that resonates with them at the moment, then I know we're connected energetically. And then I just jump right on in. And when I jump right on in, what that means is if we're doing a full scan, I'll start with the head, eyes, ears, nose, and throat. And as soon as I'm in someone's space, as soon as I begin to feel differently than what I normally feel, then I know I'm in. And I just sort of take it from there.
At the end of that session, how do you close things up, because I can imagine that sometimes it might be, even if you're in as an observer, as a reporter, I can imagine that sometimes it might be difficult to let go of some of that at the end of the session. How do you keep yourself clean as you leave the session?
Uh, I do what's called a white light wash, and I just sort of wash myself with white light from head to toe. And also, what's very helpful for me is um, washing my hands in cool water and splashing it on my face, and that sort of breaks the bonds for me.
I love that too. I think so I'm a professional intuitive and do a lot of private sessions every day. And there's something about water that is wonderful at gently kind of breaking any energetic ties that might be there and letting you start clean. That's funny that you and I are both washing our hands in cool water. Um, so now let's say that you've got someone in front of you and you're in the session. What is it that alerts you? I'm just really curious. Do you see, sense, know, feel, smell? How are you feeling into those places in the physical system where something's up, where there's what you're calling an abnormality?
I'm primarily clairsentient,
Mm.
so I'm feeling. I'm working on that tends to take a lot more energy than seeing for some reason. So I'm working on asking to see the issue rather than feel it first. But feeling at this point is still my strong suit. So let's say. I'm doing a scan. I'm doing a scan, and I'm coming down somebody's right arm, and I get to the wrist, and as soon as you get to the wrist, there's a bit of a slowing in the energy. Um, at that point, what I do is I just bring my full attention into the wrist, and see what's going on regarding uh, the joint space of the wrist, the nerves in the wrist, the blood vessels in the wrist, what's going on, the muscles in the wrist, what's going on in the wrist. And at that point, I'll begin to feel in my own hand, and that's when I'll begin to see as well what's happening.
Did I understand you to say that you feel the physical sensation in your own body?
Um, I don't feel it the same way that the client would feel it. What I'm feeling in my own body is a pause in the energy,
Mm.
and brings me to that brings my attention to the area, knowing that there's something going on there.
So interesting. So you're listening to Out of the Fog, and I'm talking with medical intuitive Timothy Wallace. You can find out more about Timothy and his work at timothywallace.com. You can also find him on Instagram, where he is Timothy Wallace Medical Intuitive. So for listeners who are curious about feeling into their own bodies, how can they start? They're not going to feel into it the same way you do, because we're not all medical intuitives. But for listeners who are wanting a closer connection with their physical bodies, if they want to start to learn to listen to themselves a bit more, how might they start?
It's resoundingly simple, and hopefully I'll be able to explain that in a way that everyone will understand how resoundingly simple it is. Uh, basically, what they can do is just uh, meditate and get themselves to to that quiet place where they can feel that quiet place where it's just themselves, and they can feel little nuances um, here and there. And the easiest place to start is the top of your head, and just concentrate or allow yourself to feel the top of your head. And this is something that no one ever takes the time to do. Just allow yourself to feel the top of your head. And as soon as you do that, suddenly, as I'm doing it, I'm actually feeling the hair lying on top of my head. And it's got definitely got a certain feel to that. So in comparison, if I were to do a scan on someone who is bald, it would feel completely different. Um, and if you and you can do this, feel the hair on the top of your head, come down just a little bit, and this is something no one ever does. Allow yourself to feel your ears, your outer ears. They've got a distinct feel to them. They actually have, as I'm doing this, for myself, I notice um, um, that the temperature of my ears is just a little bit less, a little bit lower than the temperature of the rest of my head. Um, and due to a little personal note here, due to uh, a little accident at during childbirth, I've got one ear that's a little bit lower than the other. And as I put my attention on my ears, I'm drawn to that as well. I had sort of forgotten about that until we started doing our little self scan now.
Aha.
uh, but yes, I've got one ear that's a little bit lower than the other. Uh, and then just for fun here, I'm just going to go to the tip of my nose and feel what the tip of my nose feels like. Excuse me. And as I'm there, how do I explain? As I'm there, it's similar to my ears in the respect that it's just a little bit cooler than the rest of my head. But as I go up and into the nose here, I'm actually inside my nose feeling what's going on here. And I'm being a little bit facetious here, but it seems to me that it's time to get the nose hair clipper out. Because I can definitely feel that. But on top of that, I am a little bit plugged, a little bit of some allergies going on here. Not that I'm feeling allergy wise, I'm just noticing that the inner portion of my nose, the airways, they just don't feel as open or wide as I would expect them to, or that I'm used to when they're normal. And that's pretty much how I do it, or how someone in the audience can do it for themselves. Just start at the very top of their head and work their way all the way down.
And, and if I'm understanding, you are feeling into what is, not into what you're afraid you might find or are worried that you might find.
Correct.
Correct? It seems to me that the energy with which we do that scan is important so that we're not putting any anxiety onto ourselves as we do that.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. When you work with people who have medical anxiety, and a lot of people do, and I think especially now, since the last few years, even more people have medical anxiety or are expressing it in that way. What guidance would you have for someone who is always worried something's going wrong with their body? How can they use these tools that you're sharing, maybe to get some comfort, but also not to drive themselves nuts?
Uh, well, for the most part, the most important thing is to get to know our bodies when they're at baseline or when they're normal, so that when something does come up and we begin to feel into it, we can self-assess, the degree of unusualness, so to speak, and that how can this help people who have medical anxiety? You can, if something is reproducible over and over again, then that would be something that would be concerning and something that would need to be looked into. If something is present but not present all the time, or present just once, that would be something not to be concerned about. A lot of times, what we need to do is learn how to disconnect the anxiety from the feeling,
Mm.
and that can be difficult, but is when you're able to disconnect the anxiety from the feeling. And a lot of times the way we do that, here we go, the way we do that is by feeling into the feeling to begin with.
Ah. So being willing to feel into that feeling of anxiety in order to examine it and clear it.
Yes.
Mm. When you are working with people in the context of this scan, are you feeling not just physical issues, but also energetic and emotional issues that may have helped to create or maybe amplifying the physical issues?
Basically, I am tuned in for the most part to the physical issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we do is, as the physical issues are identified, I pause the scan and then we begin to talk about the physical issue per se. Um, and in the teasing out of that physical issue, usually what is revealed is some emotion behind that, some fear behind that, or some physical trauma behind that.
You had many years in the allopathic sort of system, the health system. Do you guide your people who you work with now, your clients? Do you guide them to work within that system as well as working with you, or where do you stand? It's kind of an uneasy mix of options for a lot of people.
Yes, what I see is this is a great adjunct to allopathic medicine. Uh, working Bringing these two modalities together is very powerful. Um, Simply because of the society that we live in and how litigious it is.
Ah,
I would not recommend in any way, shape, manner, or form that folks turn to me or medical intuitives as their primary source of information, but we are definitely a valuable backup source. Well, we could be a primary source, but then by all means, if something abnormal, unusual, or very concerning is revealed, by all means, this is where allopathic medicine comes in as well.
how can listeners get in touch with you to find out more about what you offer?
Well, my website is timothywallace.com. And I am also on Instagram at Timothy Wallace Medical Intuitive.
Wonderful. Is there something that, as we look at tuning into our bodies and as we're looking at that practical way, right, sitting with our bodies, letting ourselves feel how we feel, is there something that you want listeners to know about their bodies or about their health?
I would say don't fear either one, and don't fear either. Don't be afraid to feel an abnormality in your body if it's truly there. It's telling you something. It's there for a reason. Don't be afraid of. By all means, don't be afraid of your health. That can only lead to problems.
Mm.
A lot of times, some things you just can't turn a blind eye to, and when you do, it can make the problem worse.
Well, and there's power in seeing what's there. There's power in honoring what comes up and then taking steps to deal with it, right? And I think sometimes um, we do ourselves an injury when we won't look squarely at what's right in front of us.
Exactly. Yes.
I've been talking with Timothy Wallace. Thank you so much for coming to share your wisdom with us. You can find out more about Timothy and his work at timothywallace.com. Find him on Instagram, where he's Timothy Wallace Medical Intuitive. And of course, you're always welcome at karenhager.com. That's a great place to find out about upcoming classes and events. You can even book a private session with me there if you're so inclined. And the fun continues over on Instagram, where I'm Fog City Psychic. There's more out of the fog content over there. There are occasional photos of Maisie the dog and a peek into my sort of not so secret, really, jigsaw puzzle obsession. See what's on the puzzle board, what I'm working on these days. And thank you for listening today. Together, we are spreading a little more light in the world, and a little more light is always a good thing. Until next time, I'm wishing you peace.